Good morning everybody, and thank you once again to come for the 35th episode of Voice of Silence. Today's guest is Bodhisatwa Dasgupta. That's a long name, so he prefers the name Bo or Bodhi. And a little something about him is that I've met him fairly recently and over just 2 cups of coffee. And I think what I did observe about him are 2 things mainly, that his openness of conversation, clarity of thought, and even one more thing is his vulnerability. That is something, as somebody who's been conducting these for a while and have been in conversation with a lot of men, I realized that at least here not many men are willing to come forward and talk. Whereas I found a lot of willingness and openness in Bo to come and share his story. So on that note, can we please give a big round of applause to Bo. Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So Bo, as always, I always begin all the episodes with a little bit of introduction into your life.
Okay.
So if we can begin with your childhood, your family and the environment that you grew up in.
It's a fairly simple question. My childhood was shit. It is. And for most, I think for most Indian families, it is shit with various and varying degrees, right? And I don't think my story is a special story in that sense. It is what it is. I grew up with a mom and a dad and a sister. And my dad was an alcoholic. But, I mean, you know how we often label people with their habits, right? And so an alcoholic is equal to a bad man, right? That's how we more or less label. It's very easy to put people into boxes like that. My dad wasn't a bad man at all. He was a great guy. But he had this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing going on, right? Where Dr. Jekyll was really sweet. Dr. Jekyll he was a writer, he was in public relations, and he had this old it's old right now, but it wasn't very old back then, a typewriter where he would write stories. And he would write the beginnings of these stories and then he'd wander off somewhere, smoking a cigarette or pouring himself a drink. And I would see that story typed out on that typewriter, and then I would finish the last bit, or I would take the story forward. I think that's how my love for stories in general sort of came in. But as I said, that was Dr. Jekyll. Mr. Hyde was a different ballgame altogether. Mr. Hyde was like, he meant business, and Mr. Hyde was also very violent. Not with me, but there were violent episodes at home with my mom, and you know, I grew up seeing stuff that I think I wouldn't want any child to see. You know, I would hope that no child should go through the stuff that I've seen, knowing fully well that children do. And at a very early age on, I think I started asking very profound questions, which I now think are very profound. And back in that time, I don't think they were profound as such. It was just, why do 2 people have to be married to one another if inherently they don't like each other, right? And I started asking that question from a very early age. And I was about, I think, like between the age of 6 right till about 12, 13, I would wish they would get separated, right?
And your sister, she was how old? She's older?
My sister's 5 years younger than me.
Younger.
Yeah. So, you know, different people have different ways of dealing with different things. So while I became very vocal about everything, and also because since I was older to her, I had a slightly different role than her. But she withdrew inwards, right? And that's who she has become as a person right now as well. So it all, you know, we are what our experiences are, right? So yeah, I mean, childhood was, as I said, it was mostly shit. Some good times here and there. My dad.
This is all in Kolkata? You born
This is
in Kolkata?
Yeah. This is Calcutta.
Okay.
This was in the 80s when the credit card had just come in. My dad, for some reason, thought that having a credit card meant that you could just spend money without having to pay it back. So,
is that an assumption or like?
No, it's not an assumption. I'm sure he thought that because he had no intention of paying back anyone. So,
I mean, like sometimes I think maybe you would have felt like that because, well, most of us as kids felt like that. That credit card.
No, but the fact that I came back. I remember very distinctly. I came back home from school one day, and I saw this Maruti Zen, green olive, wasn't green, it was like a bottle green Maruti Zen parked below my house. I was like, okay, who's come home? So I went up and I discovered that my dad had bought a car on credit card. Who does that? Which normal person does that, right? And then of course, he had to pay it back some time, right? So, and then banks back then had these recovery agents, right?
Yeah.
And there were these big burly people who would come home, and the look of it was very frightening. So they would come in the evenings, at which point my dad would be sitting with his whiskeys and food and snacks, and it was just starting. The night was just starting. So these recovery agents would come, and by the end of 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever, these recovery agents would be sitting with my dad drinking, and no money was not taken, money was not exchanged. So they would go back home drunk, and they would come back the next weekend. So my dad was great with people, great. He knew how to flip a situation around, and because he was a nice person. I mean, by and large, he was a nice person. Terrible when drunk, but nice
When you say
person.
terrible when drunk, you did talk about your
Violence, yeah.
Violence. You
Yeah.
spoke about your mother.
Yeah.
Was he ever violent towards you and your sister?
No, never. No, never. Yeah.
And so, since what age did you start to understand these things?
What things?
The violence and this kind of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality. At what age did you actually start to observe these things? That okay, you know what, dad's like this at this point and he's not like that at the other point, and I don't like that he's being violent with mom. Like, by what age were you experiencing these things?
See, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde concept was a concept that I learned much later, right? But as a child, you're being exposed to two sides of the same person, right? So I understood that.
Early on.
Yeah, I mean, I understood alcohol is equal to so and so, sober is equal to so and so. So I understood that. So to a point where I would start getting panic attacks. I mean, now you call them panic attacks, right? Back in the day, there were. I'm assuming there were panic attacks because every time he would bring the bottle out, I was like, oh my god, shit's gonna go down, right? And I used to be so thrilled when, you know, one day he would just choose not to drink. For then that day would have been a great day for me. So, but of course, I mean, all of these experiences end up scarring you in the long run. So what happened now is that I love alcohol, right? I love gin. I love experimenting with different kinds of cocktails. But till date, I can't get drunk. I mean, no matter how much I drink, I can't get drunk.
You think that's a subconscious
Yeah, it's fucked
like
with my head,
barrier?
right? Yeah, I mean, I can't. I mean, it's impossible. So I'll drink to a point where I know I'm going to.
Just about.
Yeah, I'm not even going to get drunk, but I'm just going to lose control. So this sense of losing control, honestly, I'm sure it's like deep rooted, because this sense of control exists in every situation. For example, even in college, when people were doing all sorts of drugs, I stayed the fuck away from all of that. I haven't. I mean, in my, I think 30s, 40s, I may have, someone was smoking a joint, I may have taken a little bit here and there, but that's it. I mean, I don't want to even enter a situation where I don't have control, because I don't want to trigger anything which I might do, which will be perceived in a certain way, or I just won't have control over my own actions, because I've seen what alcohol can do or what substance abuse can do.
So my question to you then is, and also for anybody who's watching this, is does this kind of control come through fear? Is it fear generated and fear motivated, or is it that you genuinely, consciously are making an effort that, you know what, I don't want to repeat that behavior? Like you just said, I don't know if I lose control. Is that fear?
It's fear.
Or is it that it's fear?
No, yeah, it's fear. I have no wish to be a good person and not like pavitra and like not repeat. Like I am not that person. It's just fear.
It's fear.
Yeah.
It's fear that I'll lose control and I will become him and get violent. Is
Yeah,
that
not him so much,
the
but
rabbit
just
hole
like
goes?
I have control over this situation that we're in, right? I am in control of what I'm saying right now, for the most part. It would be a terrible situation if I wasn't in control of the situation. Like if I was intoxicated, I wouldn't know. And it's not like you can take those things back, unfortunately, right? Once it's done, it's done.
And that you're saying from having been the recipient of
Yeah.
it, or at
From
least the
seeing,
witness,
witness.
spectator to it.
Yeah, witness.
Okay, that can be a. I don't even know actually how to react to that, but I think it still is a good thing. The point is the ends justify the means.
Sure.
You know, like you said, I don't want to be pavitra and all that, but well, at the end of the day, you are still displaying things that so-called pavitra
No, but
people might.
it's not always a good thing, because imagine you, Adi, Ivy, me are sitting in the evening and just getting hammered, right? We're about 5 pegs down, right? 3 of y'all, not Ivy so much because I know her history as well, but 2 of y'all will be at a certain level of highness. Your Highness. Okay. But y'all will be at a certain level. Whereas me, I won't be in that level. I'll be here. So it's not a good thing, because I'm not being able to match up with the vibe, right? And I should, because I mean that's what I'm not even talking about getting drunk. I'm just talking about just feeling that slight happy high kind of thing.
An abandon, like a careless abandon.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to come to actually. Like for example, let me give you my example, because Adi I think shares a history here, and it's already there on YouTube. He had come for an interview as well. But in my case, I don't drink, but I used to, and my parents don't.
Yeah.
So I started drinking when I was in college for just the fun of it, and enjoyed. But yes, you're right. I don't have any barrier. Like if I know that I'm in a safe space.
Sure.
I don't come from that place where I have history of how somebody can behave. I'll go nuts. That's what I was trying to understand. Whereas I see that you are saying that you do come from a place of fear.
Yeah.
I don't know how that must be. I'm just trying to understand from your account. That's it.
It's great. I'm sober and I laugh at everyone else. It's amazing. Yeah.
You can watch the shenanigans.
Yeah.
Anything else you remember from that time? Did you ever react in any way or anything that you remember?
I did react. I mean, see, when you're a child, your reactions are curbed by your body weight and body size and all of that, right? But when you're older, you know, your body is bigger, so you can react in a slightly different way. So there was this time when I think one of the evenings, I don't remember when, I was possibly in class 11 or 12. I had started going to the gym, and in my head I was like Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I wasn't anything like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's you being about 16, 17.
Yeah, about that. And he was drunk. I mean, that I'm not going to start the sentences with that anymore, because that, let's just say that's a given. Okay, he was drunk, and he was getting into one of his violent streaks, and he was approaching my mom, and I did the most filmy thing ever. There was a bottle of beer empty bottle of beer lying on the table. So I picked it up by the neck and I smashed it on the table. And I said, if you have to go to her, you have to come through me. That, like, it was as filmy as that. So I stood in the middle. Of course, I had no idea what I was doing, because in my hand is potentially a weapon. But in my head, I'm like, okay, savior mode on, protector mode on, right? So that's what I was doing. Anyway, so he advanced, and I just swung out. Like I had it wasn't like a stab. It was like that kind of movement, and I ended up slashing his wrist. Okay, and then of course we had to rush him to emergency, get stitches done. He was very cool about it. As I said, it's like slightly psychotic person. He was very cool about it, and he said, "Look, I get where you're coming from, but like this shit is dangerous, so don't do it again." So to which I said, "But the shit that you do is also very dangerous. So I mean, where does that put us?"
You had that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we would have these conversations. That's what I'm saying. So like, it was very.
Got it.
It was a very balanced relationship where he and I would talk as friends, right, at a certain time. But when he was drunk, all hell would break loose. So it was also that. So yeah, I mean, living with someone who's an alcoholic is problematic, because you're encountering a lot of people at one time, and not just alcohol. I think any substance abuse, you're encountering a lot of people. You're not talking to one person. You're talking to many people, and you have to figure out who you want to be with that person. So you cannot be one person, right? Because you're talking to so many people.
That's true.
Yeah. So
especially as a child, and that too, I'm just trying to understand this. Children may not be, I don't know, children whether they are internally equipped, maybe they are, or not. Like how do they react? I mean, and what kind of impact? Actually, that is my next question. Although if there is anything else you want to say before I move on, anything else about that bit? Okay. So as you grew older, did you see any emotional impact on you, vis-a-vis, or in comparison, or in context with your peers? Like, I know, again, my reference to context is my own husband. he has told me that growing up, his reality, in fact, when we got married, he told me that his reality and my reality of a family was very different. He said it also. So that occurred when we got married. We were 33 when we got married. So I'm saying, did something like that happen with you while growing up? That okay, this is different, just because you came from a certain background. I think that involved maybe alcoholism.
Yeah. So I think what changed with me, and I think this affects a lot of people as well, is that the concept and the definition of a family is something that is taught to us by books and our grandparents and parents and pop culture, right? The whole white picket fence story, right? And I'm sure you're exposed to Peppa Pig, right? Peppa Pig has the same story, right? So there's Daddy Pig, and there's Mommy Pig, and there's Grandma Pig, and there's Grandpa Pig, right? And they have a lovely little cottage somewhere with a white picket fence like this. So when you're dealt cards like this at a very early age, you start questioning the whole concept of family itself. You're like, this is not what I was promised. Okay, and this is the situation that I'm in. So what happens when you grow up is that I think you start wanting that very, very much.
Craving?
Yeah. And when I was in school, or I met this girl who became my girlfriend. For me, it wasn't about getting laid. Yeah? And for most people in my age group at that time, hormones were flying all over the place, right? But for me, it was, wow, I love her, I want to marry her tomorrow. For me, it's always marriage. Marriage or nothing, right? And that never changed. I got married, I got married later. I got divorced also. Then I started dating. But even when I was dating, when I was on these dating apps, it wasn't ever like, chal, we'll figure out as we move along. No, it's very clear. Yes, date 1, great. Date 2, great. Date 3, great. Good. Let's get married, bro. And that would scare people off. Of course, that would scare people off, because there are normal women out there on dating apps, and this guy says, let's get married. Where did that come from? But it's all like, how do I explain to them? Like, this is very deep rooted. You may not understand. Like, I am looking for this thing because I haven't got this, right? So,
thank you for saying that. Thank you for again, like I said, vulnerability, right? He's being open, which usually which mostly women are. I don't know if you are noticing the difference here. I'm not trying to be sexist and all of that, please. But the point is, we are in the 35th episode, and I think you're the 6th or 5th man who's come, right? So, hai na, matlab hamare samne itna disparity. But coming back to you, Bo, so this you just mentioned the beer bottle incident when you were 16. Then let's move on to your education. What you said, you started work early and things like that. Let's talk about that, so that then I can move on to
school finished, and then college started. I started. I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be in advertising. The only thing I was potentially better than mediocre in was writing. There was nothing else I was good at. So my options were very limited. Back in the day, it's not like I could become an hashtag influencer, right? Or like a LinkedIn, like whatever the fuck these people call themselves on LinkedIn, right? So it was either advertising or journalism, and I tried both. I freelanced for Times of India around when I was in school, and then I wanted to get into advertising. So there was this college I joined, the only college back at that time that had an advertising course. So I joined, and for the next 6 months, all I learned was how to draw an apple, and I was like, this cannot be advertising. So I dropped out. I said, I'm not doing this. And then I was working for the next 6 months. I was working in a bunch of places, doing random shit, like hiring people for call centers. I was interviewing people on the road for filling up forms, and I realized my boss is not going to know if people have filled up these forms or I filled them up, right? So I would just fill up these forms, give random phone numbers, and you would get money for every 50 forms that you submitted. I don't know what it was. It was something. So I would just go back home, pour myself a beer, and just fill up those forms, fictitious names of people, just to make that money. So that happened. And then I got into a proper college, and then I was like, okay, I got into JU, Jadavpur University, and I did English. And then in the first year, when I was in college, again, drunken episode night at home. So this house that we were living in then, our the earlier house was undergoing renovation. So this new house that we were in, it had two balconies, okay, parallel to each other. And this was my room. This was my parents' room. So dad was drunk. Mom locked him up inside and said, "You get sober, then I'll open a door." So he said, "Let me out right now, or I will jump." Now you don't take a drunk man seriously. You never take a drunk man seriously. Perhaps you should, because he was on that balcony. I was smoking a cigarette on this balcony. I saw him jump off, and I saw him. I didn't wait for him to fall because I knew that there's no way this fucker would survive this. There's no way.
What floor was this?
This was sixth, I think, sixth or seventh. Can't remember. One of those two. So I went down. The lift wasn't working. Remember, I ran down the stairs, and he was lying there. And I mean, there was nothing I could do. So then we took him to hospital. The hospital said that whatever doctor said, dead on arrival. All of that happened. It didn't. Situations like this don't really hit you at that point in time. It hits you much later, because then you're on this autopilot mode. You're on survival mode. Your shock comes in much later, right? So. And then, people came over, puja happened, this happened, all of that nonsense happened. Then I started working many jobs because there was, because I had to. There was a lot of, as I said, credit card money, free money, like buying random shit, all of that. So my mom and my dad had started a business together, which my mom was then carrying on. I was working 3 jobs together, waking up at an ungodly hour to go to one job, then going to college, doing my morning classes there, then going back to another job, then going back home, getting some rest, and then again going out at night because I was working for Page 3 Times of India. So I was covering the party circuit. So that's what my life was. I was surviving on about 3.5 hours of sleep a day. If you ask me to do that right now, I can't. I'm in my 40s now. Things are very different. But I could. Back in the day, I could sustain that kind of life. I sustained that for a while. So I did my college, all that happened.
First of all, I'm sorry again to listen to that incident, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just sorry.
No.
And the other thing is that was that a coping mechanism?
What?
The frenzy of working. We tend to sometimes. I'm just asking you. We tend to do that so that we don't have to stay alone with our thoughts sometimes. Do you think, and if it was, let's say maybe in hindsight, did it help?
I don't know if it, I mean, I'm sure I was coping in some way, and but I think it was more in terms of a breadwinner is not there in the family, so you have to sort of pull up your pants and
rise to
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I think it was more that.
It was
than,
that?
yeah.
And how were the 3 of you then? Like, did you have conversations around it? Like your mom
I don't
and
think
your
we
sister?
honestly, I don't think we spoke about that as a family too much. We should have.
Okay.
We should have gone into therapy, because a situation like that can potentially fuck up a family. So we should have gone to therapy. We didn't. We each left it to ourselves to cope with it how we would cope with something like that. My sister coped with it in her way. My mom coped with it in her way, and I coped with it my way. Had we sort of coped with it together, I think we would be stronger as a family together. But we didn't. But also, you have to understand, therapy as a concept was very, very, it was almost non-existent back in the day, right?
Even today, it's not rampant.
No, but it's far more.
But it's spoken about far more, but it's still not a go-to. It's still not as that. But what I'm saying is, yes, you're right. At that time, it was out of question.
Yeah.
But
I did go to therapy.
Go to a counselor.
I did go to a counselor when I was in class 11. This was when my dad had gone to rehab, and they had this thing where if you had a child and your child would need counseling or something like that. So this counselor sat opposite my school. So I would finish my school and then I would go to her. She was about 27 years old. Very attractive lady. I fell in love with her, of course. I fell a hell of a heels in love with her. And then she got married. And then I stopped going to her because I felt betrayed. So that happened. So obviously, fun life, very interesting, fun life. Next question, please.
I got stumped for a moment. No, when you said fun life, because it's awesome. That you say that. you know, because I'll tell you why. Because all of us, you said that all of us have a certain idea of a family, and all of us have quite messed up childhoods to a very. I have not met anybody who's had, and they're lying if they say, Kanika, I've had a very beautiful childhood. They don't want to talk. You know,
I've met quite a few people.
Yeah, you have.
Who've had normalish.
No. Because when I sit to talk to them, they will. If you are messed up, which all of us are, and it's not to say that your parents are messed up. No, the point is you're different. No, we're not clones of each other that we'll all be like this happy Peppa Pig kind of family, right? So all of us are messed up in our own ways. Of course, the others have been through some things which, well, there is no ideal. But what I'm trying to say is still why see it also, you know? To that I'm saying, which is why he is the voice of resurrection, which we're going to come to very soon. But the point is that today sitting here, you look back and you say fun life. So I think, and well, I can feel the vibe that you're not lying or pretending, which means that somewhere you accepted it to such a large degree that okay, that's part of my life, that's who I am, and I am because of that.
Yeah.
And therefore I'm choosing to celebrate it.
Yeah.
So it's fun. That's amazing. That's what I'm trying to say. So thank you for that. So now let's move on to your work time. You were saying that okay, I started working early, and also of course because of what happened to your dad, and you had to rise to the occasion. My question to you next is, you said page 3 hua, sab hua. That was still out of somewhere compulsion, somewhere out of karna padega.
Yeah.
When did it move to choice? Work. That okay, you know what?
College finished. I started doing traineeships at a couple of agencies in Calcutta. And then I got an opportunity to move to Delhi in 2007. So very interesting story. You want to hear that? How I moved to Delhi?
Please, all yours.
So I was working at this company called Genesis in Calcutta, and I was tasked with writing a website. Now, I'm talking about 2006, 2007. Websites were very rudimentary back then. Very, very basic, right? And I was doing a lot of research on seeing what great websites there are. And I found Ogilvy's website, which is one of India's largest agencies. And I was like, wow, what a great website this is. And I went to the contact us page, and there was this small little email address which said jobs, for whatever jobs, write to jobs@ogilvy.com. And I was like, I must do that. So that's what I did. I wrote a long ass mail, which I can't find right now because that email address doesn't exist. But a really long mail as to why they should hire me. And bear in mind, I had zero work, negligible work. Of course, the work in Calcutta and the work everywhere else is very different, right? The work in Bombay is very different. So then I sent that mail out, I sent it to the ether, and I continued what I was doing. About a month later, I got a call from this number in Delhi, I think. And this voice said, hello. I said, yes. Yeah, Bodhi. I said, yeah. Yeah, you're hired. So I thought it was a prank. Okay. And I hung up. 10 minutes later, this lady called from a similar number, says, hello, is that Bodhi? I said, yes. So this is so and so. I forget what, I think Usha was, I forget what her name was. Like, I'm Emmanuel's secretary. So I was like, Emmanuel. So I Google, who's Emmanuel?
And Google आ गया था तब?
तब तो Google था, some search engine, Bing, कुछ तो था, मतलब something was there.
Okay.
So I found out that he was the head of Ogilvy. Okay, so what I technically did was I hung up on the head of Ogilvy's face. That's what I did.
That squeaky voice.
Yeah, that squeaky voice was Emmanuel's.
Okay.
I regretted it much later. So anyway, so she said, whatever, when can you join? I said, I can join tomorrow. She said, no, tomorrow's not going to be possible. Please get your documents in order and let us know when you can join. So that's how I moved to Ogilvy. And I had a great run. I spent many years in Ogilvy, went somewhere else, came back to Ogilvy. Then, yeah, but my career, as soon as I moved to Delhi, was like, it was just going off and taking off, and I was doing very well. And at some point, I think I was voted one of India's hottest creative directors. And then Impact 30 and 30, all of that shit was happening. And the rise was quite like epic and very, very quick. And it wasn't like I was working hard for it. I wasn't slacking. But great advertising career. I mean, money was shit. Like advertising money is shit. But you can't have everything, right? I mean, so the career was great. Money was next to nothing. But
This was in Delhi.
this was in Delhi. Yeah, this was in Delhi.
And this would be like up till what?
This was 2007, right up till 2018, by which time I had worked at about maybe 5 agencies in total, I think. Yeah.
And
about
when you were,
that.
so when you were at this point now, you would be what? How old? I would say 20s, mid 20s, late 20s.
Which year?
2018. Sorry, you would be in your 30s.
Yeah, 30s.
What I'm trying
yeah.
to say is, I'm still going back to your history.
Hmm.
How were you dealing then? Like, had you dealt better with the past, with dad, with your childhood?
So I got, yeah. So
like, were you dealing better? Was
yes,
it there parallelly with you?
Yeah. I think these cute little monsters exist with you. And you have to learn to be friends with them.
Yeah.
Instead of saying that, go under my chair and sit there. You have to.
So you learn to be
you
holding their hand and
you
were
have to be
walking.
friends with them. Yeah. So I got married. I got married in 2009, and we met. This lady and I met when we were working together. She was working in a different department. We met, and then again I think I was very, very young. I mean I shouldn't have gotten married that early.
Why do you
I
say
don't
that?
think any man should get married that early. I got married when I was 27 or something. It was ridiculous. No man should marry that early.
Why do you say man though?
Why do I say?
Why do you say just man? Like, I'm just trying to
Because
understand.
men mature far later than
That's
women.
why.
Yeah.
I somehow I kind of share that. I was 26 when I got married. I say the same for women. I don't think any woman should get married before 30 in today's day and age. Is what it's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Is what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of men don't
Yeah.
mature only.
They
so
do.
So that's also there.
Yeah.
Especially men who stay with their families and their little mommy boys don't mature. They're not given the opportunity to mature.
On a lighter note, are there any other?
Huh?
Are there any other men except for mommy boys?
Hey, that's me.
Just asking. Just asking. Okay. My husband actually left for a moment outside. That's why I thought, why not take this opportunity and ask? So yeah.
Yeah.
Please
So
continue.
yeah. So then I got married and we had a kid. 2011, Mimi was born, and I mean, my wife and me didn't get along. It was slated not to get along. And we would have fights, but like I'm incapable of fighting. I can't fight. My solution, and this I say very publicly to any partner who's having problems with another partner. If any of you all are having problems at home, please try this at home. If one partner is screaming at you and there's a fight, potentially situation which is tense, take off all your clothes. Take a banana, peel the banana and eat it. There is no way you can have a fight in that situation where a person is naked in front of you eating a banana. You cannot.
You used to do that?
I've done that a couple of times.
That helped?
Not at all.
What? It's moot.
No, but
what are you saying?
that fight would break up. Another fight would take place.
Acha,
Yeah,
acha.
that particular fight.
That
would,
one,
yeah.
okay.
How do you fight with a naked man eating a banana? It's impossible. Right. So.
Just trying really hard to stay like stoic. नहीं हो रहा है.
नहीं होगा. I told you, नहीं होगा ये.
Okay. All right. Huh.
So yeah, but anyway, on a serious note, okay, serious face on. I started seeing that this potential marriage could end up destroying my daughter's life, and because I've lived that life, I've seen what it can do. I said, no fucking way, dude. This cannot happen, right? So I packed my bags and I left. It was very hard to do because I'm in love with her, not my wife, my daughter, ex-wife, my daughter. Yeah. Like she is everything to me. Like my entire life revolves around her, right? So it was very hard to do, to leave the person you love the most in order to protect them.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard. But I did it, and my life went to shit after that. I mean, there were countless days, right? I mean, I was staying in Princeton at that point when I moved out, and my ex-wife was in Wellington, so they were very close to each other. So I would go every day in the morning. The school bus would come, then I would go back home. Nights were horrible because what the fuck do you do at nights? I mean, when you're used to cuddling up with her and sleeping with her. What do you do at nights? So that was a very, very hard phase. But then I would have these conversations with her from a very early age.
Openly?
Very open conversations. Yeah, I wouldn't hide anything from her. I still don't hide anything from her.
Anything that helps?
Yeah, for sure.
It helps.
Yeah, you normalize the situation.
It does, yeah.
You normalize the fact that, hey, just because we got married doesn't necessarily mean that we have to stay on together even though we are unhappy. What doesn't change is the fact that you're still the center of our universe. That doesn't change, right? So, I understand what you're going through is hard. I get that. We're here for support. So, talk to us however way you want to, or you want to withdraw, do that as well. Cope, right?
So, sorry to interrupt you. What you're prioritizing then for your daughter, through your experience, is that family, or a concept of family, is based on love and not so much on the Peppa Pig reference point, right? So that is, it's important to tell everybody that's listening here that this is where you personally have made a change. You're not repeating patterns that you saw. So first up, being communicative with your daughter from the day one. Why? Based on love and based on a little bit of fearlessness that, because I feel a lot of our parents, not their fault, please, nobody's fault, it's just the world was such then.
It was.
That, so much pressure that ऐसे ही करना है, even if घर पे कुछ और ही चल रहा है,
But even now, that pressure still exists even now.
I'm saying थोड़ा बहुत things are shifting a little bit. But people like you who are being very communicative with their child, based on the fact that, I really love you. And I love you. So, there is no fear of, you may not like me. And that I'm going to move out, I'm going to step out. There's a possibility that you may think, I'm sure that must have gone through your head, Bo, that I hope she doesn't feel I'm abandoning her.
Yeah, for sure. For
feeling,
sure.
Right? But wo fear leke for her good. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. That is amazing, and that's important that it goes out to people there that, जब प्यार है ना तो सब हो ही जाता है. Whereas other things don't always help.
Yeah.
Please
but
continue.
But to expect also that she's going to turn out to be the same as other kids who, it's never going to happen. She has issues. Of course, she has issues, and
everybody does.
Yeah, she'll deal with it in her own way, right? What you can do as a parent is try and make her life better, which is what I've tried to do.
Yeah.
Right? Given a potentially shit situation, I tried to make that shit situation less shittier.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's it.
Right?
And very andar dil se, like doing it like with your core, and that's the best.
Yeah.
You are bringing in the best.
Yeah.
At this particular time. So
that's all you can do as parents. There's nothing else you can do as parents.
So how's that going? And I know that you're remarried. I've been right here. How is that settling in, that entire situation?
Oh, it's great. Yeah. I mean. As I said, we have these very honest conversations between ourselves. So, I mean, she now, of course, discusses her dates with me. Not her dates, but her crushes and stuff. All that. I like this guy from the bus, and I was like, okay, great. What's his name? What does he do? What do you like about him? So yeah. I mean, she has the comfort to share those stories with me, and I love and to a point where when she's hanging out with her friends also now look at me as that. Oh, like we can share stuff with him.
Yeah.
That's nice. But it's a reciprocated feeling because I also share stuff with her. When I'm pissed off with her, I have an honest conversation with her.
Yeah.
Right? I tell her to understand feelings because I think feelings are so underrated and feelings are so often not talked about because you don't somehow manage to find the words. But if you can find the words to describe what you're feeling, right? That's great, right? And however you're feeling, you could be feeling really crappy, but if you can tell someone that you're feeling crappy because of something that they may have done or they may not have done with that intention, but you still feel crappy about a certain situation, right? So talk about it. So, when Ivy and me met, for example, I spoke to her. I said, "Listen, I've met someone. We probably are going to get married. What's your take on that? What do you feel about that? Would you be okay with that?" She's like, "Yeah, for sure," and she was very excited. But so now, like when she comes over, we have a great time together. Ivy is not her mother, stepmother, none of that. Ivy is a person.
Yeah.
That's it. Ivy is a person. I am her dad, but I mean, for practical purposes, I'm more of a friend, right? So we have this lovely little triage where we do stuff together. We go out. It's a lot of fun. We hang out as people and not necessarily as
relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships.
Yeah.
I'm your
As
father.
bucketed,
I'm
labeled.
your ex. I'm your current. That's what I just said. It's about love.
It's about
you
love.
You can love anybody, and that's your family.
Yeah, correct.
It's just as simple, actually. I wish more people understood
so
it.
So there's this thing, right? I mean, which I believe, and Ivy also believes about blood family and water family. I think just because your blood doesn't necessarily mean that you're thicker, you're closer. You could very well be closer with someone who's not related to you at all, but who genuinely cares about you, who genuinely loves you. Right?
I fully believe that.
Yeah. So in my grown-up years, I think I have more of these people in my life, which are very, very thick.
Kind of because you choose them also, no?
Correct.
You make a choice and you work towards nurturing the relationship rather than it being forced on you by default.
Sure.
And then aap nibhate rahoge types,
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, they are also important, but then it has to be a two-way street is what I feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is what I feel.
Absolutely.
It cannot be a one-way thing. Bo, there was a false allegation at a certain point in time. You want to talk about that?
Sure. I'm talking about everything. Why leave that out?
Go ahead. I mean, what was it? When did it happen?
2018, there was a false allegation, and then the agency that I worked with at that point in time asked for my resignation. So
this was in Delhi, or
this was in Delhi, and I said why. So then there was whole concept of this conversation around business dropping this, that, whatever. So I gave in my resignation. And then, there was a conversation before that happened. I said, if you give in your resignation, you will get 2 months salary or 3 months salary or something to the effect. And if you don't, then you'll get 1 month salary. Some shit like that happened. Okay. And then when I gave in my resignation, this agency that I was at put out a tweet, which wasn't true at all. It was a very untrue tweet. But that tweet destroyed whatever career I had built for myself. It just destroyed it. With just that one tweet, and I had a conversation with my boss, and I said, look, what's going on? This is untrue, because if it is an allegation, then you have to prove it. You can't just say that there's an allegation, right? There has to be an investigation. Where's investigation? There's been zero investigation. So I was paid to keep quiet.
Okay.
And at that point in time, I remember thinking, I spoke to lawyers, I spoke to many people. My career, for whatever my career was dead because of the one tweet. It was dead, right? You can't take back a tweet. There's nothing I could do. So the only option that I had was either it was I think 4 months of my salary or whatever that they gave me, or 5 months, I can't remember. So I could either take that money and use it as a cushion for myself to springboard again into something else, or I could fight it. I could tell the actual story of what happened. And I figured no one was going to believe a word I would say. Nobody. So what happened was I took that money and I used it. It's still lying. That same money is still lying in my account. I haven't spent that money. But I realized then, much later of course, I realized how important it is to talk about what's going on. I mean, barring the consequences, of course there would have been consequences had I spoken. But still, I should have. I didn't. I've kept quiet about it for many, many years. And also my trajectory changed, the work that I was doing vastly changed. But what it did was, suddenly from having a well-established career, I was like nothing, right? And that fucked me up, because what that did was any foreseeable future of making money stopped, right? But that wasn't important for me. What was important for me was, how the hell would I pay for my daughter's school fees?
This was happening at the same time where the divorce was, how far apart?
No. The divorce, I think my divorce came through around 2014, I think.
Achha, so this was later. So then all the more there was responsibility.
Yeah.
So you were single, looking after your child. You were single father.
I was single. Yeah.
And had a daughter. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, my daughter stays with my ex-wife. Doesn't stay with me. Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. But still, there are responsibilities, right? So I figured, dude, money was not going to come, right? So what then? What was I going to do? And I realized that, look, I can't come back from the situation. Like, I've been cornered to a place where it's very difficult for me to, like, there are certain situations you can come out of, right? I couldn't come out from this situation, and I went into a very, very dark place, an extremely dark place, and I made a very well thought out. I'm a great strategist. I love thinking things over. So I made a very well detailed plan of how I was going to kill myself. It wasn't out
Kill
of
as in kill.
kill. It wasn't out of emotion, but it was about if I died, then the life insurance would kick in. At least there would be some money for my daughter, right? So I made that elaborate plan, and then I went off to Calcutta. And on the flight back from Calcutta back to Delhi, something flipped. And what flipped was very simple. It was, how I love how life comes full circle every now and then. What flipped was the fact that when I moved to Delhi, I moved without knowing anyone, without having anyone to help me, right? The stuff that I endure at home, I did on my own, right? And there have been constant things which have been thrown at me, and I've just been trying to bat them. And I realized that if I could do that, if I could come out of a situation as hard as watching my dad die in front of me, then fuck yeah, I could come out of this. So I reached back Delhi, and I drew out a plan of how I was going to start earning again. My worst case scenario was driving an Uber. So I did all the maths. I spoke to drivers. I went to the Uber platform. I saw how much money I was going to be making. An Uber driver makes about $80,000 a month. You know that?
I know that because you told me, but I didn't know that yet.
So I figured with if I sold off my car and if I could stay in a PG somewhere, maintenance money, school fees, I could put in, and with a little bit of freelance projects here and there, I could manage to do that. The great thing about a worst case scenario is that once you have that worst case scenario locked in, then so you can just go out and do whatever the fuck you want, because you know that this is there, right? So then I started talking to people. I had a great portfolio because I was very good at what I did. So I said, look, this is my work. This is what you will read about me. If you have some time, read more, right? Read it for what things are. Don't just read what's written. See the untold story there. And if you still choose to work with me, great. If not, I totally understand. So I did that. I spoke to about 10 people, and as I predicted, out of 10, 7 would say no, 3 would say yes. But then what happened was I started working with 3 people, and then those 3 started recommending me to 5 other people. And but the work that I was still doing was very, very good work. It was good work. And that happened for about a year. And about 6 months into doing freelance work, I was making close to what I was making as a salary, as my last salary. About a year later, 2019 August, freelance was going good. I was getting paid. I decided to set up my own agency. Because why the hell not, right? Like, may as well. So I locked myself up in a hotel room, and I figured out, I drew up an agency plan, and I said, okay, this is what my agency would do. This is the kind of work that I would choose to do with people. And I called it the Voice Company. I called it a voice company. There are 2 reasons why I call it a voice company. The reason I tell most people is that, I try, my work involves a lot of brand strategy and brand tone and advertising for mostly startups. And, if I ask you, what's the difference between Zomato and Swiggy, right? It's the same product, right? But you remember Zomato more because they have a very unique brand tone. Now that brand tone hasn't come from somewhere, right? Someone has thought about what that brand tone is going to be. So that's essentially what I do for startups, right? So that's the reason I tell people that I call it a voice company, because I help give voice to brands. But the real story of why I called it a voice company was because I realized that, dude, having a voice is so important. Yeah, it's so important, and it came from retrospect, like most things do, when I didn't have a voice for the longest time, and it felt so great to finally have my voice and just just speak about things
and own your space.
And own it.
Own your
because
space
and that is, once you own it,
because
no
it's yours.
no one can fuck with you.
Because it is yours. I mean, it is yours. Like, it is your right to stand in that space and have your time in the sun, or whatever you want to call it. Whatever, it is your space. And it's interesting, very interesting. It's coincidental, voice
Yeah,
and
it's
voice.
like very,
It is
yeah.
very, very, of course, my voice comes from a different place, but well, still leading to the same place. You know,
Yeah.
the history is very different, but that was very coincidental. When I was doing my research on you is when I saw voice, so very interesting. So, how's that going?
Very well. Very well.
That's good to know.
Yeah, very
and
well.
it's important at this point to let the viewers know who are watching that this is the point of resurrection, you know, where it is literally Bo 2.0, right?
Yeah, but this, I mean,
Kind of?
Yeah,
2018-19 onwards?
yeah,
When you
almost.
set up the voice,
Yeah.
the voice company,
Yeah.
right? When you were in that hotel room chalking up a plan based on nothing, kind of,
Yeah.
after the Uber experience,
Yeah.
you know. So it is in a way Bo 2.0.
2.0.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that. But also, I think what I've been doing at the site also is trying to build a community. And so I run something called the Copy Traineeship, where I teach young kids how to write copy. And with that, I'm trying to build India's largest copywriting community as well. And a lot of the stuff that I talk about is not just about writing copy, it's also about own your goddamn story. Because I feel everyone has a story.
Everybody
right? Everyone has a
does.
story. Own your story. When you own your
Everybody
story,
does.
no one else can fuck with that story. Because
Nobody
you already
can.
told it.
Yeah.
You know? So that's I've begun to realize the importance of a strong story and your own story and a truthful. And the good thing about a story is that it's never set in stone. Like as you age,
Yeah.
your stories also become
Versions.
yeah. It's fluid, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm in a great space right now. I think I think most people have had their share of trauma and this and that and whatever. But you rise and you live and you laugh and you wear outlandish clothes.
And then you have a host who tries to match
Yeah.
up to those
Yeah.
clothes,
Yeah.
you know. All right, so we are going to wrap up the session. What would you like to tell the viewers? What will be your voice of silence? So you said voice of resurrection. What is it that you would like to just like a wrap up statement, few lines?
I think voice of voice. I think having your own voice, finding your own voice is very important. Not many people, unfortunately, find that voice, and I think it's the most important thing in the world. There are so many people just trying to subdue your voice. I mean, society is programmed to subdue your voice, right? And this is not a gender thing. I think people just find it very difficult to own who they are, however they are, whoever they are, right? It's one of the most difficult things to do, but if you can do it, right, and I think you're great. I mean, if you can own it, then nothing can touch you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I agree with you. I share that with you. I also know that it's not easy, but yeah, I think that's the parting message.
Yeah, for sure.
That
Own
should
your
be it
voice.
then. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.